Right, for more on this conversation, we're joined now by chairperson of the Institute of Elections Management Services in Africa, Terry Tselane. Terry Tselane, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. So, I don't know whether you get that sense yourself, but there's been a sense, especially in the last couple of weeks, maybe even a month, if you like, where there was a sense that the language that was out there amongst political parties contesting was becoming somewhat problematic, a little bit more violent, one would say, more violent than what we normally pick up when we contest elections. Now, today, of course, they've now attached themselves to the Code of Conduct. Do you expect that is going to tone down that kind of aggression that we have been seeing?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and good evening to you and to your viewers. I must say that you are correct in terms of what has been happening recently, that there's been an atmosphere of anxiety and nervousness, and some of the statements coming from some of the leaders have not really been helpful, especially in terms of the creation of environment conducive to free and fair elections. And I think the signing of the Code of Conduct today and the public declaration by political leaders that they will be bound by the provisions of the Code of Conduct will go a long way in terms of creation of that atmosphere conducive to free and fair elections.
How seriously do parties take this particular Code of Conduct, but how seriously does the IEC itself take this particular Code of Conduct? Because the expectation is that as soon as, unlike what we have seen recently, there is a violation of the code, we are going to see quick relief and quick dealing with the situation.
Well, the Code of Conduct is very important, not only for the Electoral Commission, but for political parties. For the Electoral Commission, it's important because it helps the Commission in terms of making sure that they can manage the elections within an atmosphere that allows for free and fair elections, or that allows for a smooth management of the elections. For political parties, it is important because, firstly, they assist in terms of the creation of that environment conducive to free and fair elections, but also there are heavy penalties if political parties do not adhere to the provisions of the Code of Conduct. So it is important for political parties that have publicly declared their allegiance to the provisions of the conduct to make sure that their supporters as well as their candidates adhere to the provisions, largely because if they don't, they could rather incur very heavy penalties going forward, including actually being excluded in the running of these elections. In other words, they can be excluded from participating as candidates and as parties in the electoral process.
Maybe let me put it this way. Does the IEC have capacity for quick relief? For example, the utterances that could be inciting violence, but there could be utterances, of course, that could also be spreading falsehoods and making false claims.
Well, the IEC will never really have the capacity to be able to manage each and every aspect, particularly when it comes to disinformation and misinformation. But to the extent that they've got a tool that they can use to deal with those who violate the provisions, I think it's a significant step. And the fact that they can refer some of the matters to the Electoral Code will go a long way in terms of assisting them to be able to run a smooth election.
So let's talk about another issue that could have occurred today. I mean, the pledge was disrupted a little bit by one independent candidate who raised up and kicked up a storm because her photo was not published within the programming like it has happened for the political parties. Of course, the IEC managed that particular situation. But I suppose the broader question is that, is the IEC also in itself geared for this new dimension and new level that they've got to deal with of independent candidates, and making sure that they level the playing field, that what is accorded to bigger political parties is also equally accorded to independent candidates?
Well, the IEC has got to appreciate the significance of this moment and the fact that there have been changes that have been made in the legislation to deal with the new entrants. And I think if they make elementary mistakes such as the one that they've made, it is going to be very difficult for them managing the process going forward. I would think that they have learned their lesson and they will now begin to be thorough with the detail. Because if they are not, then there are going to be significant challenges to the process, to the extent that some of the issues would actually lead to them being taken to court, particularly in relation to the announcement of the final results of the elections. So it is important that they make sure that those elementary mistakes do not happen and that they nip them on the bud so that, they can be able to manage a very smooth election. Elementary mistakes such as that, as well as what happened in the past where there was leakage of a list of candidates of certain political parties, is not helpful in terms of restoring confidence in the electoral processes. But I hope they are learning from all these small mistakes, because the small mistakes can become big mistakes when they are not attended to.
Terry Tselane, I appreciate your time, Chairperson of the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa. Let's take a break. We'll continue in a moment, and we'll speak to the Department of Police. The latest Marion Hill shooting has been on many of the South African lips. We'll speak to them about their view of what took place there.